Hello and welcome. My name is Ajaxpost and I am once again delighted, beyond delighted, to be sharing with you another first look at some of the upcoming features of Transport Fever 3 due in 2026. We've seen just over a month ago a more detailed look at the environment and world building, all the way the terrain looks and operates in many aspects of Transport Fever 3, how that has been improved. And in today's episode, once again narrated by Sam, the new community manager for Urban Games, previously known as Colonel Failure, probably still is to be fair, but we see some of the astonishing changes that they have made to the tycoon end of the game, which is kind of the weak spot, if you will. There were several weak spots. There's weak spots in every game, let's be honest with ourselves. That looks all about to change in Transport Fever 3. So let's have a look at this and see what's going on. And as before, I will be spending a lot of time pausing and talking about what we see, what I think, any extrapolations I might make, but most importantly, we'll be starting that conversation about what we think is going on and what is happening. We're seeing here once again one of the key new features of the game design is we now have offshore industries, which is a sand dredging industry. And one of the key things we're talking about here, which has been mentioned previously, is that industries expand. They have an initial space they take up, but as they grow, as you demand more of them, they will grow and expand. We're seeing some examples here of all new industries. Now this is something we saw in the first environment first look video. Industries now come with an inbuilt station. Now all the examples I've seen so far have been road based. They've been using trucks or lorries, if you will. I don't know, I haven't seen any that integrate train stations, but as we will see, one of those delightful oh my goodness yes moments that we had at the end of this video. If you've seen the official video, then you'll know what I'm talking about. That moment at the end as we realised, hang on, that's a cargo tram. Yes, there were mods actually in Transport Fever 2 which enabled you to use trams as cargo delivery, but now they are part of the vanilla game. And in fact, talking about the vehicles here, we are told, I should have checked this earlier, I might add a little annotation to the video, we are talking about, so far they've announced 250 vehicles in the game Transport Fever 3. That will match with a significant increase in the number of industries and cargo types. The numbers we have so far are 32 industries, separate industries, which will lead into 37 different cargo types. And don't they look beautiful? Again, it's not just the map, the world that looks beautiful. Now this is one thing, key thing, that I think was kind of hinted at in the first video but is now made clear and identified, and we'll see this cropping up throughout the video, is that these businesses grow in a particular pattern. Now we will shortly see what that means in terms of how you lay it out and the things you may need to be aware of when you're planning your infrastructure around your industrial sites. They will grow. They do have pre-allocated space given to them when they're set up, and you can drive your roads and your rail and put your stations on those pre-allocated spaces, but that will then mean you'll be limiting the potential growth of your industrial sites. So that's something to bear in mind when you're developing your transport network around your industry, and we'll see that momentarily. There you go, they're expanding, they're growing, so those are places you will not want to put your stations or your roads or whatever, but there is room around to squeeze a road in there. And what I'm thinking is that sort of dirt track, that gravel track that we're going through it, is that the route for the station, for the trucks, the vehicles going through there, or are they limited to that little block at the very top of the image that we see here? I'd be interested to know if that is actually drivable area. I'm not oh, I am. Yes, I might zoom this in a little bit on the edit. We do apparently have those little blue trucks at the top who appear to be taking a route around or on that gravel track. That's nice, isn't it? I wonder how that's going to affect those sort of players who like to design their own industrial sites. But again, doesn't it look good? This is one of the things about this new game. It looks fabulous. Look at that, oh, in that mountainside. And talking of mountainsides and lakes and so on, the industries will actually be tied to the environment you're placing them in, or the environment they're in. So in deserts, for example, you will get no fishery industries. Kind of obvious, really. But the landscape, the environment, the biome, and the industries do all appear to be interlinked. So depending on which map you play, which particular environment you're using for that map, you may well get a different set of industries, or they may grow in a different way. Again, we haven't seen all the details of how that mechanic will work, but it's an interesting concept that, yeah, each gameplay will have industries which are more specific to that locale, to that biome, which is a nice touch, to be honest, rather than the generic that we got in the previous games. Ooh, look at that animation. That is cool. The flash. And there we see again the internal stations within the industrial site. All that pipe work. That is so nice. Now, a point that Sam makes in describing the industrial sites and their built-in stations is that they're great for getting your industries and your network off the ground, so you don't have to spend vast amounts of money just building stations to get the industrial sites producing and delivering and receiving goods and product. But those internal stations are going to be quite slow. They're not going to be as efficient or as expandable as a genuine external station will be. Actually, talking about the industry growth, one thing that was mentioned in the release notes for the video, in the press kit for this, is this weird, well, interesting, fascinating phrase. If I can read it out here, I'll put it on the screen as well, I think. The businesses expand naturally and adapt to terrain thanks to new field mechanics, while, and this is the exciting bit for me, prospecting allows players to uncover entirely new sources of raw materials on the map. So you're going to have explorers, are you going to have prospectors, sort of digging for oil or whatever, or hunting down wild beasts to domesticate or whatever. Yeah, so rather than industries randomly just popping up somewhere on the map, it's going to be much more naturalistic. Again, it's a word I think I've seen them use in a number of their presentations for Transport Fever 3, is natural. So everything kind of feels realistic and things evolve, they don't just happen. And in a puff of smoke, there's an oil business or whatever, for example. Again, look at the construction of these industries. Looking good. Do we see trucks? Just noticed that little blue truck here by the blue hut on the right hand side. That looks exactly like the vehicle I thought might have been moving around that gravel track that we saw in the earlier image. So maybe they are just plopped. They are just assets added to give flavour to the industrial site. Maybe not real vehicles in terms of our network. Interesting point made here is that for these offshore industries, like for example oil, you can use ships, which I imagine will be the most efficient way of getting that cargo out. You can also use helicopters. So helicopters, and I think we did discover this in the previous announcement videos, helicopters can be used for both passengers and cargo. And more about passengers to industrial sites a little bit later. Doesn't it all look good in this nighttime as well? Right, now we're getting into explanation and a description of how the industries work together and some of the new elements they've added into the industrial and production chains. This is Hanko, some sort of town somewhere. I'm not quite sure what the star means there. Is that a reputational thing? Is that in some way representing their opinion of us, 1 star, or does it go grey or whatever? That'd be interesting to know. I'm also seeing what looks like, peering at this without zooming in, a face next to that. Or that could just be a tall building with a advertisement on it. Could be. Anyway, yes, talking about towns, settlements and so on, that's again something brought out was the natural evolution of not just your industries but also town demands. So initially your cities, your towns, your settlements, as they will be if you're in 1850 whenever, will have very simple limited demands. So for example, they might just want raw materials like vegetables. In your industry, yeah, cool. Or something very simple like that we're used to. You didn't go beyond vegetables. So I don't know if there are any other raw materials that a city might want at that early stage, but they will evolve as the city grows and as your supply to them grows. Cities will evolve more demands, as we're familiar with in Transport Fever 2, as was added during the updates of the game. But now, apparently, cities could potentially demand up to 12 separate products. Can you imagine the logistics of doing that? I mean, I've never done that in my game, but I imagine some of you who've used the expanded industry mods will be familiar with attempting to deliver hundreds, okay, I'm exaggerating somewhat, a lot of different industry types into your cities. It becomes an interesting challenge, let's put it that way. Anyway, so what we're talking about here is the city is growing and they want what Sam describes politely as beverages. I'm going to call it beer because that looks like a beer bottle to me. So they want us to produce beer. Now this is obviously a more complex industry chain than simply supplying them with vegetables, foodstuffs or whatever we might be going. So we're going to start looking at creating that industry chain. Now that's our brewery, and as you can see here it wants both grain and glass for the bottle. There's lots of new UI we're seeing here. I think some of it is kind of for the first time. One thing I noticed, there was an interview with Sam at Gamescom, and he was saying there that they are very well obviously advanced in designing the features and the look of the game and so on, but something they're still finessing is the UI elements. So some of these things may well look different. The UI and the screen layout may well look different in the version we get, but it's a good insight into how some of these mechanics work. So here we see production requires both grain and glass. It's interesting there. So one thing I noticed was we've got 8 against the grain and 3 against the glass, and 8 as the output of the bottles. So is that what it means? Is that three elements of glass, 3 items of glass and 8 grain will produce 8 beers out of this brewery? Interesting. Nice to know what that actually is. But again, you can see through just reading down that dialogue box the chain. So you've got the input and the output described, and presumably a progress bar to what that is at the top. A booster thing, which we'll talk more of momentarily. You've got the input stocks, the grain and the glass, and that goes down to the output, which is the amount they've got stored in the industry that's been produced, waiting to be shipped out. And then a little graph which shows you the cargo flow, all looking very good. Now, this is where the expanding industry sites really come into view, and we can see something interesting here as he plays through this. This is obviously a farm which is going to be producing our grain, and what he's doing here is drawing a road straight off the existing main highway into the farm. Interesting, I just noticed that arrow, so we've not seen that before. We've kind of seen these dotted lines to give you the angles of the road in relation to its origin point. But what does that arrow signify? Presumably it's not one way. But what he's doing there is he is potentially, as it says here, removing 2 fields. And they are not just decoration, they're not just cosmetic fields, they are, I suspect, actual potential expansion plots for this farm. We'll see that more clearly in a moment. So there we go, that's the road done. Now that's going to affect both the expansion possibilities of this farm and, from what we've learned so far already, potentially the reputation of our business. Now notice here there is actually a space just to the south, as it were, of that main farm element. A bit of room there to try put a road in. So we could have put a road in, taking a slightly longer route perhaps around that farm without going through those highlighted fields. And you can see here what I imagine, I suspect, I assume, are the expansion plots for this particular industry. So when you're looking at an industry site, you can see where it could potentially go. You then have to make the choice as to, do I put my roads, my rails, my whatever through any of those potential expansion plots, or do I attempt to navigate whatever that free space is around the centre, the core of the industrial site. And again, notice here on this industry dialog box here, boosters. Interesting. Are we talking more of that? Shall I talk about that more later? No, let's talk about it now, shall we? So what we've got here is, when your industry develops, when your chain develops, you will be producing final goods to be shipped to consumers in the cities, and your industries within the industrial chain can expand, as we know they do in Transport Fever 2. Now there's obviously more room and more style, as we will see, to the way they can expand and be expanded. But you can also boost that maximum potential of expansion by using other inputs. So the source input, so for the brewery, that is going to be grain and glass. We also saw on the brewery dialog box a booster of a person. In this one we've got another product, and that, I believe, was said is fertilizer, which kind of makes sense. So if we can supply both fertilizer and, if we want, workers, people to this site, it will actually add a boost to the production of that industry. And the boost is noted there in a percentage point just to the right of those symbols. So the fertilizer, it can take up to 17 apparently, and that will give us a 50% boost, and 10 people, workers, 114% boost. So you could really crank out a lot of stuff from each industrial site. So you shouldn't need necessarily to have 3 or 4 farms dotted around your main industries to produce the required input to get all the goods out from there. So this means you don't need to create that many new connections on your network. Again, which should hopefully reduce your costs. Here we are. Ooh, there's interesting. What does that mean? So this is a Bodmin Road depot. It's got a maintenance pool of 12. What does that mean? It's got a circle around it. I don't know what that means. He didn't say anything about this. He was just saying, now we're going to create a route for our vehicles. And it's also got there a list of maintained vehicles. So is there going to be a whole new maintenance mechanic? They did kind of hint at this in the earlier videos, in the earlier releases. And what is going to be going on there? There's also a button at the bottom, manage vehicles, which is, I think, as we'll see in a moment, ouch, we do that bright white thing. Can I go back here ever so slightly? Aha, that's right. So here we are, selection, 2 vehicles in Bodmin. So what are they going to be doing there? So we've got line information and obviously a pin so we could locate them presumably. This dialog box looks a lot different to what we're familiar with in the vehicle manager. And presumably it's a nice movable box rather than the sort of fixed position ones we had previously. Well, the old one was kind of movable, but it was clumsy and clunky. This looks a lot neater. Centre line, which is what he's going to be doing now, is creating a line from there to there. That's excellent. And those, seeing nothing particularly new on there. I don't think it's a new design, but it looks like it does pretty much exactly what we're familiar with when we're creating new lines. Anything new here? No, we can edit them. So obviously we can give names to everything again, which I always like. And there we go. They're going in there to do that. They look like pumpkins. And he was talking about how these internal stations, yeah, it does look like there was a vehicle there, wasn't it, which just sat there doing nothing. Now, this is the other part of the industry chain to produce our beverages, our beer. This is the sand dredging, which is coming out from an offshore industry. And here we're introducing the warehouse, a new building within the game, which is used like warehouses would be typically in the real world, as a storage location, as a logistics hub. And again, what they're doing here with these buildings is sort of expanding upon what we've seen already in Transport Fever 2 with modular stations, is these buildings can be modular too, that you can design to meet your needs. But can we move that back again? Right, so he's going to the bottom in warehouse. Presumably he's going to configure this. There he goes. He's putting down a new unit. Now, warehouses can be designed to be either a single type of product, like a bulk or a liquid, or an end product for the cities, or whatever's carried on flat cars, steel, planks, whatever. So you can configure your warehouse to do any individual specific type of cargo, or you can make it just a general warehouse to take everything. And again, the trade-off there is, if you make it generic, then it will do anything you want it to do, but it won't be as efficient or as fast as if it was a specialised warehouse or unit. So that's going in there, and that looks like a different type of warehouse space. And same with the stations. You're not just designing and loading platforms now, as he's showing us here. He's going to configure this road station. And what we're going to add on here is not just another platform or a station building to expand the capacity of it, but particular storage types. So what we can add in on our stations are specific platforms and storage units for bulk goods, for liquids, for whatever. So you can create a station which is designed specifically to handle a particular cargo type, and that will be the most efficient, the fastest, the best choice you could make. But obviously it will come at an extra cost. They will be costlier, larger, and more polluting. Interesting, that. I'm not quite sure why they should be more polluting, but hopefully we'll get more information on that. So you can make your stations. Let's skip back again on that. So here you can see the bulk cargo specialises in those particular bulk goods. It will load with increased speed, but all other cargo types will be loaded. So it could actually still handle other cargo types, but it will be much slower than the universal cargo platform. So again, you make that choice, that trade-off, which is a good economic game, a good tycoon game should give you those trade-off choices to make. But to be honest, it looks good. And here we see the station dialog box here, the info panel. It shows us we have one terminal which is specific to bulk goods, which is good. And also, by the look of it, it shows you the maintenance cost, $369. And obviously if you tie in the station cargo type and the vehicle cargo type together, you'll get the best, most efficient shipment of your cargoes, your products around your map. But one point he makes there is obviously vehicles will evolve over time as they always do, but be aware, not necessarily, the newest ones may not necessarily be the best choice for your particular cargo setup, your particular network, particularly if you've got a specialised network where goods are always going to particular places. Then you'll want vehicles which will match that in the best way possible, and that may not always be the newest vehicle. So again, will maintenance come into that equation? So will they need to maintain those older vehicles? Yeah, there's so much to think and conjecture in this game. Just noticed here as well the reflections in the sea there, in the water, of that crane. So what are we seeing here? Oh yes, so we could make this dredging platform more efficient, once again by sending workers to it by helicopter or by boat or however we wish to do it, and that gives us apparently a 65% boost, what it says there, up to 10 workers, or machines. So machines aren't just an end product for consumers in your cities, but they could be boosters to be used in other industries. Kind of makes sense again. So if you've got the capacity to ship machines to some of your other raw material industries, then they can be used to boost that production. And that boosts by, what it says there, by 50%. Looking good. The models here, I mean, it's just like the world. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I mean, I often, if you watch my Let's Play series, I express admiration and awe at the beauty and detail of some of the modded vehicles that, in particular, that I use in my games. The work and effort that goes into creating them is impressive. This, yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say it looks even better than the best of those modded vehicles that we've got, which means then that can modders, because they'll have a much better set of tools and assets to work with to start with, create even more mind-blowingly gorgeous vehicles in Transport Fever 3. Looking forward to that too. Now, what have we got here? Yeah, the cargo flow. Different coloured bars. What does that mean? We've got mainly the blue bars, which I assume is the output of sand from this dredging platform. We've also got green and red. I mean, we're not talking about financial figures here, are we? It does say cargo flow. And also notice here, it's all on the same date, the 24th of the 4th, 1980. So once again, I'm going to assume that we have full control over the date, speed, and so on within the game, as we're familiar with in Transport Fever 2. Be interested to see if they add any more options to that, because there were people I know that wanted faster, slower, whatever date progression, and which mods were able to offer. So there are our boosters, and they're all green. We're getting machines and people, workers supplied to this, and we're getting that appropriate boost. Very nice. And the green bars going up, so those green bars might well be indicative of those boosters being in place, which means that you have to keep on supplying them, that you can supply them from a one-off hit perhaps, but if you fail to deliver them within the next industrial cycle, production cycle, then you will lose that benefit. Yeah, your mind starts racing at this point, doesn't it? Interesting smoke effect on that crane. I think he's coming to a conclusion here. He's wrapping up the video and describing what's going on, the options that we've got for the Tycoon, which is not just industry chains anymore. We've already heard about reputational things from the first look video looking at the world building and the environments in Transport Fever 3. But something he introduces here is special subsidy contracts. Now, if I can make a reference to my notes here. Right, the press release refers to something called realistic missions and public contracts, describing it as dynamic public contracts encourage players to think on their feet thanks to a new heat map system, tasks and subsidies that match the current focus and geography of the player's network. For example, concentrating operations in one region will naturally attract opportunities there. So if you were building a sort of agriculturally based area within an industry chain within one part of your map, then certain opportunities, those subsidies will crop up. It doesn't say much more than that in the notes that I've got here, but what Sam was saying in this video was that delivery and time of delivery will be crucial. So you'll have to take a risk on completing a task for that public subsidy, but if you don't match that delivery within the timed requirement, there will be a penalty. So that subsidy will suddenly turn into a penalty on your business. So you've got to be really confident that your network can meet that challenge. And just noticing here, over on the left-hand side of the screen, coming out of the station, is a cargo tram. We'll see more of that in a moment. What I will wrap up saying here, as he concludes the video here, is another paragraph within the press release for this video, was that passenger transport remains vital. Every citizen has a home, workplace and leisure activities and expects expect reliable service. Congestion, bottlenecks and changing conditions constantly challenge players to optimise. Alongside this, city building. More cargo trams. City building. Is that going to be a new feature in this game? Is that going to be something we can actually focus on? Not just delivering and supplying goods to the residents and the businesses within our city. Can we actually positively engage, proactively, explicitly, deliberately engage in city building? Maybe that's where the public subsidies thing comes in. Don't know. One of those vague things. They might just mean you're helping the city grow. You're not actually specifically putting in targeted building to that city, for example. With more details to be shared in the future. So we're going to be hearing quite a bit more about the game's progress as we go into 2026. On the assumption that there'll be another of these first looks roughly every month or so. We've got a few more to come, I think, from this. But everything is looking really good so far. And I'm just really excited about, if you want to play Transport Fever 3 as a proper transport tycoon game, that should now be possible. There's all sorts of new things that are being built into it. For players like me, who enjoy the challenge of a game, of actually coming out and getting it right, basically, is what it's about for me. Not necessarily winning. I'm not someone who goes in and says I must beat this game. Games aren't meant to be beaten in my mind. Games are there to challenge you to come up with ideas and solutions to problems. And you will win in one way or another, but that is not always the objective of games like Transport Fever 3. And I'm now starting to waffle, so it really is probably time for me to wrap up this video. This Let's Talk Transport Fever 3, our second episode looking at the first look video from Sam, the community manager of Urban Games, taking us through some of the upcoming economic features in Transport Fever 3. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, slight apologies for how long I take getting through the video. Love to hear from you about what you think all this means to the game, and in particular the way you play it. Is this something you've been really waiting for and desperate to see in a transport tycoon game? Just drop a note to that comments box below. And of course, if you want to keep on top of news of Transport Fever 3, then you could do worse than subscribe to this channel. Hit that little subscribe button coming up somewhere around now. And of course, if you want to actually be actively notified of when these videos come out, then click the notification bell. But anyway, from me, Ajaxpost, here in another Let's Talk Transport Fever 3. Until the next time, bye bye for now.